During his mortal ministry, the Savior was followed by great multitudes. He preached and taught and even fed large numbers of them. But the memorable ministrations of forgiving, blessing, and healing were with individuals, one by one, according to their needs. Priesthood leaders must work through the Spirit. There is no other way than this. Prayer, fasting, counseling together, consultation, genuine concern, and again, prayer. These are the elements of true creative flexibility. These are the way we prepare to meet individual needs. Two days after Douglas and Carrie Showers joined the church, they were transferred.
We received the missionaries. They gave us their message, and we invited them back, took the lessons for quite a while, attended church for I think it was about 2 months. And then I was preparing to go back into the Air Force, but we wanted to be baptized before we left town so the sister missionaries could see us baptized. We were baptized and left town 2 days later and went immediately into inactivity because there were too many things in our lives that we felt we couldn't overcome that would keep us from coming back into church.
With no one to fellowship and strengthen them, they were virtually lost for nearly 7 years.
Well, we went from St. Louis to Biloxi, Mississippi. I was approached once by a member of the church. I guess he was assigned as our home teacher. He asked me if we were interested in coming back to church, and I said no. I was massively filled with guilt, and I don't even think I told my wife about it for years.
Finally, a quorum leader who understood his role as a shepherd sought them out, became their friend, and helped them come back.
He put his arm around me and welcomed me back to church. He made sure my home teachers were coming to visit. When we did become active again, he talked to me a number of times about receiving the Melchizedek Priesthood and becoming an elder. And just made sure I had lots of things to do in the church that would keep me busy.
The brethren I worked with that were activated were willing to come to church, and they were willing and open to talk to us. It was us, as brethren in the quorum and a presidency, had to go out and make the effort to go and find them. Once we found them, we find that some families are really willing and able to grasp the gospel, and they'll come back, and they will cling to the principles you teach them. Sometimes inactivity is due to not knowing their duty, not knowing the gospel.
I was inactive for silly reasons, or what seemed like silly reasons now, but they were important to me then. And when I realized that the church members or the quorum leaders were not going to give up on me, that they were going to be patient and loving with me, I was easily able to let go of all the reasons I had for staying inactive. And once those reasons were gone, and I realized that I could be a human being who had flaws and needed to work on correcting them, that it was easy to come back to church then.
As quorum leaders seek the Lord's Spirit and counsel together, they will be guided to those they should serve.
Neither Brother Wade nor I had ever met Brother Maxwell before, and I'd only been the Elders Quorum president for a short time. But we had been given that assignment by the bishop, and he had been selected as one of the prospective elders that we felt was probably more ready to come back into the church than maybe some others were at the time. So the appointment was made, and we went over one evening to visit him in his home. And there was some hesitancy on my part, because no one likes to be rejected. No one likes to be turned down. And yet, as Brother Wade and I prayed in our living room before we left, I felt the Spirit very strong, and I gained some reassurance at that point that things may go better than we had expected, or maybe better than I thought they would. We didn't go in and just try to have a casual conversation with Brother Maxwell, and we didn't go just to let him know that we missed him at church or that we'd like to see he and his wife coming back to church. We really zero in and let Brother Maxwell know that it was important that he become ordained an elder for himself and for his family. And I could tell Brother Maxwell was touched by that invitation. But before we left, we got a real commitment from him. We didn't just let him say, well, let me think about it, or let me talk it over with my wife. We encouraged those things, but we also asked him to commit himself to really come back into the gospel, to get himself ready to be ordained an elder, and eventually he and his wife to go to the temple.
The Maxwells accepted the challenge. Brother and Sister Spader were assigned as special home teachers to fellowship and teach them the gospel.
A lot of wonderful things have happened. I was ordained an elder in the church. In December, my wife, who was a non-member, joined the church, and I had the honor of baptizing my wife. And that was a wonderful experience for us. It really was great. Since then, our ward split, and we now have 8 wards in Federal Way, and we wound up in 3rd Ward, and the Spaders wound up in 2nd Ward, but they're still fellowshipping us every Monday night. And since then, I received a calling as second counselor in the Elders Quorum, and I'm really enjoying what I'm doing. I just love it.
When I saw how that worked for Brother Maxwell and what it did for him and for his family, then it let me know more assuredly that there are others out there that need that same commitment, need that same challenge put into their life. And if they are ready, and if the Spirit is there and strong enough and guiding us as we felt guided to Brother Maxwell, then that can happen over and over again. And that's really what it's all about.
While reviewing his list of prospective elders, David Norris found the name of Lewis Wilson, a man who'd been inactive for many years. President Norris determined to find a way to reach him.
He would come by and see me, and he'd have a little few jokes or something, and he will teach us to have faith.
It appeared that Brother Wilson was going to try to come back to church, and we were encouraged by that. And so it was during that time that in a PEC meeting that we discussed with the high priest group leader and with the bishop the fact of assigning a strong brother to home teach with Brother Wilson. It was just after we had received the counsel that we could be more flexible than ever before in priesthood organization, that we could use high priests for prospective elders. And so Brother Mel Wallace, who is the patriarch of the Birmingham, Alabama stake, and who is really a patriarch in true sense of the word, a strong brother with a strong family and rich tradition in the church, was assigned as Brother Wilson's companion. And even before Brother Wilson ever came back to church.
As soon as he became active, Brother Wilson was given a calling as Assistant Elders Quorum Secretary.
We determined before Brother Wilson came for the first time that we would use that time to train him and to teach him about the Elders Quorum, about the priesthood, because for so long he had not been involved with the church and not been involved with the priesthood. And so whenever we came to things in Elders Quorum presidency meeting that I felt like he didn't understand, we'd stop. We'd read portions of the Melchizedek Priesthood Handbook, and we'd talk about what it was that we were doing and why we were doing it.
It seems like it'd be a puzzle. The things that I really wanted to know and was missing, the pieces seem to fall in place. And it makes it a lot different. I can understand it a lot better now.
3 months later, Brother Wilson was called as president of the Birmingham 3rd Branch. Quorum leaders cannot minister personally to all of those for whom they have responsibility. They must call upon the full resources of the priesthood. Home teaching is the priesthood plan for ministering to the saints.
Home teaching is something in the church that in a lot of quorums is very difficult to accomplish. And the key to it, we feel like, in our quorum presidency here, is to have our personal priesthood interviews and to make the brethren responsible and to have them to report back to someone.
You just have to take the time to sit down, talk to the home teachers about the families. If you don't do that, then it really is a program, and it's not a mission of love.
When I sit down, or when one of my counselors sit down to perform a personal priesthood interview, we're sitting there, and that person that we're interviewing is important, and we convey that. We let them know that we care about them and that we love them, and that we desire them to go out and to make those contacts with the brethren and the sisters in the branch. And it's important to us that they come back and report and convey to us the needs, the wants, and the desires of the membership of the church.
Kevin Wade has caught the spirit of ministering in his home teaching assignment to the Jacks family. Sister Jacks was not active because she was confined to a wheelchair and had no way to get to church. Her husband was not a member.
One Sunday afternoon, my telephone was ringing, and when I answered it, and he asked me if I was Sister Jacks, and I told him yes, and he told me he wanted to come out and see me and see about fixing me a ramp. The next Saturday, Kevin got out here about 7 o'clock in the morning. It was just freezing cold, and he built the ramp for me.
I kind of know the both sides, you know, the way it is without the gospel and the way it is with the gospel. I tell you, it's painful without the gospel. I felt the wrath of God. There's no other way to say that. I accepted the gospel and then turned away, and I felt the pain in my heart. I almost lost my everything, my family, one of the greatest things I lost. And now I'm going forward and I'm working up that ladder. I don't know, the gospel is the greatest thing that ever happened to me. And right now I'm still growing in the gospel, you know. I say I don't have the ability, but I put my faith in Jesus Christ, and wow, you know, I have the desire in my heart to serve. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna serve.
Brother Wade enlisted the help of a non-member friend in his service project for Sister Jacks. Through his example, David Blanchard, his wife, and Brother Jacks as well, have all joined the church.
It's not difficult. We try to make it difficult. But the bottom line, it's people caring about other people and going out and doing something. People touching other people. And that's what it's about. And as we do that and we show genuine love and concern, then you will have success.
Ministering isn't easy. Always it requires patience, sacrifice, and great love.
I grew up in the church as a child, you know, and I quit going to church when I was about 15 years old. And I was a little bit bitter towards the church, and I had a real tough time with some of the beliefs. It was my biggest problem. And I didn't, you know, I stayed away for about 15, 16 years until Paul Whiteside showed up at my door.
I went to visit his home and visited with him on the porch.
I wasn't ready when he first came to the door. In fact, I didn't even let him in my house. He showed up 4 or 5 times, and and I would see who it was, and I'd open the door and close the door behind me, and we'd talk on the porch. And they were usually real brief, you know.
I felt like as I was teaching, I was, first of all, making a friend, and it was a kind of a long, slow process of teaching line upon line, precept upon precept.
He was pretty persistent on coming back to the house. There was another brother with him, Ken Butler, I believe his name was. Ken Butler was coming back with them, and they just kept coming back. And they didn't push me too hard. That's one of the problems that I had prior to that of people knocking at my door, and I felt like they were trying to get in my house. And Paul and Ken, they were real slow, and you know, and at first I felt like we made friends, and then I kind of, you know, I gained their trust mainly, and that helped me a lot. Helped me a lot. You know.
Joe was in the habit of going to sacrament with us and the children. Then he'd leave right after sacrament, come back and pick us up. And this one Sunday, he picked us up and brought us home, and he said, "I want to talk to you in the bedroom." So we went back there. Do you remember that? And he got a little emotional, and he said that that he needed a change in his life, and he wanted Christ to be within our family, and that he wanted to read the Book of Mormon, that he felt that it was true and it had things in there for him, and we did.
As I studied more and learned more about the temple and the church, you know, I seen this opportunity to be with my wife and my family for eternity, and you know, which I didn't really know existed before, you know, and that's what I wanted.
I think probably ministering means loving someone, and in the elders quorum, for me, I always relate that with home teaching. It's having 4 families or 5 families and knowing them and loving them enough to be receptive to the Holy Spirit when it speaks, to minister to the family. That can mean helping someone move. It can mean being aware of when someone loses a job and using the ward employment specialist or the quorum employment specialist or the staking employment specialist to get involved. To not be afraid to get into somebody's life. One of my home teaching families has been inactive for 3 or 4 years, about 2 years actually, and I've been in the home every month, and at one point it seemed like every month when I went, the family was further and further away. And then one month with my priest, who's my companion, I just felt like that I really needed to bear testimony to them and really challenge them and tell them how I felt and how strongly I felt. And we all shed a few tears that night as I told them how much I loved them and how badly I wanted them to come back to church. And they said they knew that they needed to come back. And as we prayed, I said, "Can we kneel?" And we all knelt in a circle. And they always asked me to pray. And I can remember pouring out my heart that something would touch them. And I wish I could say that he's a branch president now. I can't say that. They're still not coming to church. They've been a few times. But when I come, they thank me for coming month after month. And they tell me that it's having an effect on their life. And they consider me a friend. And to me, that's a success story. To me, that is ministry. And I wish anybody that's ever served in the church knows that the vast majority of the things that we do seem to go unrewarded. It doesn't seem to have an effect. But it's my testimony that as we are consistent, I think part of ministering is consistency. It's over and over again, even when you don't seem to be welcome in the home. It's going back over and over and over again and hoping that sometime during that period, something will happen in their life, and you'll be there, and they'll come back.